In the early 1940s, a cartoon Superman hit movie screens in an animated short. By the end of the decade, Superman had transformed into a live-action form of two film serials. In 1951, the Superman radio serial was ending its 11-year run when a B-movie producer named Robert Lippert released a low-budget Superman film starring George Reeves. In the fall of 1951, a television series went into production, but the production stopped shortly thereafter, and the product just sat in a can for a year. When the syndicated Adventures of Superman premiered in 1952, the success of the show surprised even the cast, especially the 38-year-old star George Reeves. When the series was filmed in black and white during the first two seasons. Later on it was actually filmed in color, but it was never shown in color. It was always shown in black and white. But the costume that George Reeves wore was actually a different color than the red and blue that we think it was. The red was replaced with brown and the blue was replaced with gray because those colors filmed better in black and white. Because the show worked on a real limited budget, this was a really low budget production. A lot of the episodes were filmed out of sequence, with all the scenes that were done in Perry White's office, for example, being done at one time. This explains why the actors always seem to wear the same clothes in every episode. For the first season of the series, the E. Clem Wilson building in Los Angeles was used for the exterior shots of the Daily Planet. Throughout the rest of the series, the building seen as the Daily Planet is really the Los Angeles City Hall. The rest of the buildings that stand in for Metropolis in the street scenes were backlot facades at the old RKO 40 Acres backlot in Culver City. Now, you might remember this from the filming locations of Gone with the Wind, and the most important one, The Andy Griffith Show. You look closely and you can see the courthouse in a few episodes of Superman. Now, George Reeves actually wanted to quit the show after the third season. They actually contacted Kirk Alyn, who played Superman in the 1940 film serials, and offered him the chance to replace Reeves, but he actually turned it down. George Reeves had tried to produce his own series titled Port of Entry, but when he couldn't secure the financing for it, he decided to return to Superman, and he actually got a salary increase. Bill Kennedy received $350 for performing the opening narration used in all the episodes, but he didn't receive any residuals for his work. Now, the costume that George Reeves wore was actually padded to give him more bulk. But Reeves did most of his own stunts, which required impressive athletic ability, including jumping from pretty good heights to simulate Superman landing. There were times where he had to hit a springboard with enough force to propel him out of the frame to simulate Superman taking off in flight. He had to swing through windows. He spent hours doing wire work and being in a body support platform to create the scenes of Superman flying. During the first two seasons, George Reeves was suspended by cables to appear to be flying. In the rest of the seasons, he was positioned on a molded platform that was contoured to fit his body, and he wore his costume over it. The exterior landing scenes were accomplished by having him jump off a ladder. When he came through the window, he would jump and swing in from a bar that was positioned outside the window. Now, what really is responsible for the television series being on the air was Kellogg's cereal picking them up. And the cast members did commercials for Kellogg's cereal at the time. But the one exception to the rule of them using the cast members to do the commercials for Frosted Flakes or whatever brand of Kellogg's cereal they were promoting, they never showed Superman or Lois Lane because they felt that this was too sexually charged and suggestive to have Clark and Lois eat a morning meal together. You got to remember, it was the 1950s after all. The merchandising of Superman products was just off the charts in the 1950s. And there were few tie-ins that were more popular than the costume cape that he wore. The problem came when children were tragically putting on the cape and leaping off houses thinking it would make them fly. George Reeves complained about this and became real concerned and pled to have the capes taken off the market. In 1955, he gave a public service announcement in a video reminding children no one, but no one, can do the things that Superman does. And that goes especially for flying. Now, John Hamilton, who played Perry White, had a lot of trouble remembering his lines. The solution was to film him sitting at his desk with his desk just littered with papers, including the script, so he could actually glance down to give himself a prompt for the next line. In the early episodes, George Reeves wore glasses without lenses in them when he played Clark Kent. As he got older, Reeves eventually needed to have real prescription glasses, so he began wearing his own glasses. And you can see this in the later episodes where you can see the reflection of the stage lights on the lenses. Now, the character of Lois Lane, the first season, was played by Phyllis Coates. She left the series after the first season and was replaced by Noelle Neal. Now, during the first season, Phyllis Coates played a totally different Lois Lane, a much more aggressive, much more in-your-face type of character than was played by the later Lois Lane. There's a couple of things that you can read about that list the reason that she was only in the series for the first season. And most of them kind of lead towards the drinking that went on the set of Superman. And this was especially by George Reeves. I think it was a different time back then. Most people look at their job as a sacred place. You don't go and drink there. That's kind of a no-no. But I don't think that was the case as far as actors went. You see, this is a common problem when they were filming. There was a lot of drinking that went on during the filming of different episodes and movies. I think it was fairly common to a lot of TV shows and movies that people drank on the set. Now, it's also said that she had some other projects in the works, but for some reason she ended up departing. And they actually offered her a lot of money, about 5 times what she was originally making, to get her to come back, and she wouldn't do it. So there was definitely something major that happened that wouldn't allow her, in her own mind, to continue working as that character. And this is probably one of those things that we will never know the true story of. Phyllis only appeared in 24 of its more than 100 episodes, but she made her mark on this TV series. She played a fast-talking Lois who was a serious journalist with a nose for a story, and she had a habit of getting herself into trouble. And while she did frequently find herself in need of rescue, it wasn't for lack of trying to save herself. In all honesty, it was usually because she was trying to help someone else. Now, George Reeves really had a fairly close relationship with both of the Lois Lanes, and he was especially a hero to Noelle Neal's version of Lois Lane. He came to her rescue in reality on a few occasions when the director was being too gruff with her. George Reeves was one of those guys that would stand up for his friends. On June 16, 1959, George Reeves died of a gunshot wound to his head in the upstairs bedroom of his home in Benedict Canyon. Now, there's a whole bunch of speculation as to what actually happened that night. There was a party going on there. There was quite a bit of drinking, and it's not known whether he actually shot himself or somebody shot him. Now, if you look back into my early videos, I think it was probably the first video that I ever uploaded to YouTube. I did a story on George Reeves, and I actually went to the location where he was born in Woolstock, Iowa. And then I drive by his house in the Hollywood Hills. You might check that out. It should be at the very beginning of my videos. So it's probably some 230 videos ahead of this one. George Reeves is interred at the Mountain View Cemetery and Mausoleum in Altadena, California. He has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on Hollywood Boulevard. I have absolutely nothing but fond memories of this show. It definitely reminds me of my childhood. I can remember watching this show on a routine basis, and you would always wait for that famous intro to start, faster than a speeding bullet. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.